In the quiet village near Burton Agnes Hall, there once lived a young woman named Anne Griffith. One late afternoon, as Anne was returning home along the narrow path, two strange men stepped into her way. They pretended to beg for coins, but their greedy eyes had already spotted the glittering diamond ring on her finger. Anne, kind-hearted as she was, opened her purse to help them. But the men's faces twisted into cruelty. They demanded her ring. When she refused, they snatched it by force and struck her violently with a heavy club before fleeing into the shadows. Broken and bleeding, Anne crawled inch by inch toward the gate of Burton Agnes Hall. A servant found her collapsed on the ground and carried her inside. She survived only a few hours, but before death claimed her, Anne whispered a chilling request. Her head, she said, must remain within the walls of her beloved home. Otherwise, terrible misfortune would follow. Her grieving family dismissed the strange plea. The next day, Anne was buried in the churchyard. But that very night, the halls of Burton Agnes filled with dreadful noises, doors slamming, wails echoing through the corridors, and sleepless terror. For 3 nights the torment continued. Finally, the family opened Anne's grave. To their horror, her body lay intact, except for her bare, grinning skull. Remembering her words, they placed the skull inside the house. Instantly, the disturbances ceased. Years later, when new owners moved in, a maid discovered the skull hidden in a box. Thinking it worthless, she threw it onto a rubbish cart. But the horses refused to move, trembling in panic, while the house itself shook as though an unseen force raged within. Only when the skull was returned inside did peace settle once again. From then on, the skull was sealed inside the walls of Burton Agnes Hall. Nobody knows its exact place, though some believe it rests behind a portrait of Anne on the grand staircase. And every year, on the night of her death, her ghost is said to glide from the painting, drift down the stairs, pass through the silent halls, and vanish into the lane beyond, leaving behind a whisper of the curse that binds her forever. My parents often whispered about a dreadful bus crash that had scarred our town many years before I was born. Just a few days before my arrival in this world, my mother was outside in the garden when she heard a sound that froze her blood. A chorus of screams, the screech of brakes, and then a deafening crash that shook the air. Neighbors rushed from their homes and followed the black skid marks down the old coach road. At the cliff's edge, they saw the impossible, the wreckage of a bus scattered across the jagged rocks below. When they reached it, they realized the unthinkable. It was the school bus. And every passenger inside had been their children. The wreck was horrific. Bodies broken, lives snuffed out in an instant. Parents screamed as they recognized their sons and daughters among the twisted metal and shattered glass. Nearly 40 small coffins were buried days later, an entire generation laid to rest in one shared tragedy. But the inquest revealed something far darker. That morning's driver had not been a driver at all. A patient from the nearby asylum had escaped, stolen a uniform, and taken the bus. Smiling behind the wheel, he picked up every child on the route, then drove them all at full speed off the cliff. Years passed. Few children were left in the area, only those too young for school at the time of the accident. By the time I turned 13, the story felt like a nightmare from long ago. One night, after the movies, I missed the last bus home. Snow was falling, my parents couldn't fetch me, and against my mother's warnings, I set out to walk along the dark country road. That's when I saw headlights cutting through the storm. A bus slowed to a stop ahead of me, doors opening with a hiss. Grateful, I climbed aboard. Inside, the air was colder than the winter night. A foul odor clung to every seat. The passengers sat in silence, stiff and staring straight ahead. I tried to speak to a boy beside me, but he wouldn't answer. When I touched the window, it crumbled with rot and cobwebs. That's when I looked again. His skin was gray, his lips shriveled, and his eyes were wide with death. Slowly, every head in the bus turned toward me. Their rotting faces, their lifeless eyes, fixed upon me. Panic surged. I ran for the door just as the bus lurched violently. Screams, children's screams, filled my ears as I tumbled out into the night. Then nothing. When I awoke, I was in a hospital bed, my body shattered but alive. My mother wept beside me, telling me I had fallen near the very cliff where the old school bus had gone down. A farmer had found me buried in a snowdrift, the only thing that saved me from death. Some say it was just an accident. Some say I imagined it. But I know what I saw. I rode that cursed bus, the same one that had carried those children to their deaths all those years ago.